Hello and welcome to another Late Night BJ. You are here with me, Buko Juice, BJ himself, ang pampapawi ng inyong uhaw. And dahil dahil Tagalog ang guest natin ngayon, medyo magtatagalog tayo ng konti. That's just how it is. But if you are a member of my international audience, just let me know so that we can stick to English. We can do that too. So, I am going to introduce my very good friend and wow, tagal na tayong friends, no?
Kaya nga eh.
Since chikiting ka pa.
Maliit pa katawan ko nun.
Oh,
Payat pa ako nun.
mas macho pa si Bullet dumas sa'yo nung panahon na yun. But I would like to introduce you to Fabs. Fabs, take it away. Tell us something about yourself.
I'm Fabs. If you know me from the RPG community, probably know me as Fabs, but if you know me through another thing called Pro Wrestling or Manila Wrestling Federation, you know me as Fabio Makisig. Right? So not only am I an RPG geek, but I also do pro wrestling. So the irony or the mixture is very interesting, sabi na marami.
Ayun. So, si Fabs, nung nakilala ko siya, yun nga, as I mentioned, he was more of a wrestling geek. Although, nagtatricking ka na nun, di ba?
Oh, athlete na ako nun, but
Oo.
I wasn't very much focused on buffing up. I just wanted to be fit.
You were a lot more lean, even though you were
Yes.
already, what's the word? Fit. Let's go with fit.
Or athletic.
Oo. Like I've never been fit in the sense of being an athlete eh. So at best I just try to take care of myself from time to time. So, let's talk about matagal na kami magkakilala ni Fabs. I think that was around 2015-ish.
Yes. 14,
So,
15, if I remember right, around those times.
so almost 10 years. OMG.
Yes. My God.
Uy, meron tayong viewer. Hello, PJC. Lipat ko yung
Yeah.
yung comment. Way up, taga, powap. Okay, sige.
Yes.
Yes. Oo na lang kami, PJC. Hi. Thank you for listening. And we as I've mentioned, we've known each other since 2014, 2015. So almost as long as Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Kulahin mo yun.
Oh wait, no. We predated Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Kasi we met next pa yun.
D&D next pa siya. OMG,
Yes.
oo nga. So that means we've known each other for even longer. Kasi I think the D&D next playtest was 2012-ish. Although it went on for about 2 years. So
Yeah, I remember just before they went with 5e, it was still next, so they were wrapping up next. We know each other na.
oh, I think we even had a playtest session at some point. Kasi nagkaroon siya na several iterations eh. There was even an iteration of D&D Next before it became 5th edition where it was very OSR. Na napaka-rules light niya. Tapos a lot of us were like, I hope sana dun siya nagpunta sa direction na yun, no? But it went with a mixture of the complicated nature of 3rd edition and the combat ease of 4th edition. And we ended up with 5e. And I guess
Yeah.
mas maraming tao yung may heading towards that direction kesa sa ating mga OSR freaks.
I
Tama
think
ba
when
ako?
I w-
When I say
Yeah,
you're an
kasi-
OSR freak.
Oh, definitely. Recently nga, nag-run ako ng game. Maybe like 2 weeks ago. I ran a game with my team. Tapos like, they said, sabi na isa, I'm gonna use this 5e character generator. Sabi ko, hindi, wag na. We're gonna play this old rule set na we can make character like 5 minutes before we start. Tapos random dice roll. Tapos may isa sinuwerte. Nakadalawang snake eyes siya. Kasi of course, obviously, I play like, powered by the apocalypse, but OSR feel. World of Dungeons.
World of Dungeons. I think there's actually been several rule sets that have tried to mix yung yung OSR tsaka yung story game. Well,
Yeah.
story game was a bit of a misnomer. I think medyo luma na yung term na yun, ano. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't call it story game na yun. But yeah, Powered by the Apocalypse is a correct term. So, way back, yung Apocalypse World derivatives. Although, ano na rin PBTA ngayon, the modern PBTAs, very, very different na. I don't recognize them anymore. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that
Evolution, you know.
it's not the design that I'm focused on.
Yeah.
So, ayan. Okay. Nagets ko na yung sinasabi ni PJC. Ninuno para libulit dumasod. Nino, 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 Nino. Okay. Thank you,
I'm
PJC.
sorry, my cat is noisy.
That's okay. Ano nga I do miss having pets around kasi dito sa aking condo in the undisclosed location, of the Buko lair. May size limit yung dogs and my husky sa just above the size limit. Pero feeling ko pwede namin i-sneak in kasi meron ako nakitang isang husky dito. So, baka makalusot. Baka kailangan ko lang ganonin yung konti yung Ano to, lalagyan hindi bastos to. Lalagyan ko yung PMO. Pwede kaya?
It would be nice kung madadala mo si Chuck dyan.
Oo.
Kaso,
Although maliit din yung unit namin
hyper din siya, diba?
Ano yun?
Hyper din siya.
All huskies are. Pero, ano yun kaya sila ganun kasi they're very energetic naturally. So, ang trick to avoid that is talagang iwawalk mo sila araw-araw, at least twice a day. So, pagka binigyan mo sila ng panahon para maging masaya, pagbalik nila sa condo mo, chill na sila.
Relax.
So, ganun siya. So, yun, ano pa mga RPG? When was the last time you've played, by the way? Because I know that the pandemic hit us all, not so well.
We played on stream a couple of times. Right? I think it was mid-2021 or something.
Nung sobrang ngarag na tayo. Di tayo makalabas sa taon na. Ano nilaro natin? Tayo ba?
Game. When was the last physical game we had? 2019 for sure. Right? I don't remember. Tagal na.
Pero have you been keeping up with RPGs? Or have your job been jobs? Should I say jobs?
Jobs.
I
haven't not been keeping up with the latest RPG trends. However, I still, play every now and again, especially with my team. Right now, I only stick with what I'm familiar and good at, which is a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse and other rules light games. Kasi in my team, there's a lot of really big RPG fans. Then surprisingly, like how small is the world na makakita ko ng ganun.
Pero it's not as surprising as you may think. Kasi, so what are some of the things that I know? I know that the up, down people play RPGs.
Yeah.
So, sila Xavier Woods. I also know that Chris Jericho played AD&D. He talked about it once. Tapos the way he described Tiamat and her 5 bites. And a full attack, claw, bite. And I'm like, AD&D yan! Alam ko kung anong edition sinasabi niya. So, yeah.
Unforgiving.
So, very close to OSR. Slightly more complex. Although may OSR na kasi I think Labyrinth Lord had an advanced system that emulated Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So, ayun. Pero ako, personal favorite ko is by the way, if you're new to this channel, this is less of an interview show and more of a chat show. So when I have guests over, we just shoot. Not in the wrestling sense. We just shoot at every topic that comes to our minds. So right now, what comes to my mind is a good blend of OSR and PBTA, and I think that's the Nightmares Underneath by Johnstone Mensker. I'm not sure if you've played that.
I haven't played that, but we planned to. When was session 0?
Oof.
2019, early 2019.
The physical one? Yung physical na session 0?
The physical one.
Teka, hinaan ko lang yung sarili ko. Masyado malakas. The session 0 was 2019, I think. A year before the pandemic hit.
we planned to play that because most of our friends were raving about that game. That was when you guys had the 24-hour RPG
OMG.
event
Uh,
where I went to that event. Tapos I didn't have time because I had show the next day ata, if I remember right. Either I had a show or a guest appearance somewhere. So I went there just to visit and hang out. Tapos pinauwian kami ni Rachel ng mga pagkain, which good.
Shout out to Rachel. Ang mami naming lahat. She's been feeding us. So shout out to Rachel.
Yeah.
Wherever you are right now. Probably not in this building. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was 2019. And I think yung 24-hour thing was 2018 because that was the year that Shao Han visited.
Oh yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
I remember it. Tapos,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
nag-TNU kami nun.
I remember Shaohan brought like a lot of books. Maybe he bought. I forget. So I remember there's like 5 copies of that in one table. Just you guys put it together and you took a picture of it. And then in like 2019, there were talks like, oh, let's play this, and then your my schedule ate me.
Yeah, unfortunately. Pero, also fortunately because, that's wrestling eh. And,
Yes,
I enjoy wrestling.
career. Yeah.
Um, quick background, no, if you've missed my last late night BJ session, Xiaohan is our friend from Singapore. So shout out also to Xiaohan. We miss
Shout
you
out
as
to
well.
Shohan. Yeah, because when I hurt my shoulder badly, he sent me like 2 ointments. It's like so amazing. Tapos ang aangas pa ng pangalan ni Black Devil Oil and 1,000 Wins something was the other one.
Oh
And
yeah,
for
I
like
remember that kasi ako'y courier nun.
yeah. For like 2 months, I just used that on my shoulder. I smelled like an old man, but it feels so good. Tapos binigyan ko yung trainee ko. I think he sprained his ankle or something. Binigyan ko yung trainee. Tapos sobrang lamig na he asked for it. He like, saan ba daw ako nakabili? Sabi ko, I don't know man, pinadala lang sa akin to. So what I did was like, he sabi ko, dala ka ng maliit na container. Yung maliit na, yung lagay ng acetone.
Oh.
Binigyan ko siya, lagay namin sa lagay ng acetone.
You know
Kasi
what?
addictive
We could
yung
ask
feeling.
Xiaohan baka mas smuggle niya rito.
Oo.
Smuggle talaga yung word na ginamit, ano?
Mukha pa siyang potion kasi dark bluish tapos bright red.
Oo, I remember that. Pero, lately, I've been getting pains din eh. So, baka makahingi tayo kay paring Xiao.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I guess something that I want to talk about is no. I remember when we first played D&D, yung mga you tended to role play fighter types. But I
Yes.
also know that as you became a professional wrestler, you shifted to bard types. So,
Yes.
what's up with that, man?
Man, violence is bad. Yeah, I remember because early when we played in your house pa, and I need to look for those videos. I have videos of when we were playing in your house with Erwin and uh
Oh, we played
ah
Cypher. Right, right?
yeah, Cypher.
Yung may
That was the
Velociraptor sa Boracay.
game. Oh. They stole like giant chickens or giant dinosaurs. Yeah. Anyway, what I was when we I started playing with you, fighters tend to, because a lot of us have fight fantasies. Like me, of course, I have fight fantasies because that's why I went into tricking and eventually pro wrestling because I like martial arts. Fighting, the fantasy of violence is there. But as I actually become more violent for the sake of profession, I'm like, yeah, thinking about this is not really fun. I gravitate towards like, oh, okay, but talking and diplomacy and then creating relationships and human interaction is fun. So I think around 2018, yeah, I felt like you were also the first person, if I remember right, who I played Bard under it, and I enjoyed it. Like, oh, okay, so bards, rely on role playing and charisma, and not just dice rolls, but actually talking and pushing the story forward, and that excited me. So I felt like, okay, I'm gonna keep playing Bard up until parang hold myself into na I'll play Bard forever, and I'm happy with that decision.
Teka, mali yung title ko. Palita ko lang. RPGs to wrestling, hindi rags to wrestling.
I would love that,
From rags to wrestling.
oh,
Parang there's a story there, ano. Well,
oh,
actually that reminds me of a Twitter thread by Kazumi Shin. I'm sure you don't know him. He's a Japanese American, if I remember
wait.
correctly. Pero he was talking about basically kasi D&D is an RPG that is premeditated tuloy. That centers the act of violence being done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily a criticism of D&D. It's just an acceptance of what D&D is at its core. And they're not saying that D&D cannot be used for non-violent things, as yung bards, and I think recent modules of D&D like the Strixhaven one, which was a very magic school teen romance kind of book. And I think yung Fey Wild Witchlight something, I forgot the name. It's also a very non-combat oriented module. Pero, D&D, yung base idea ng D&D, in fact, if you play Adventurers League, it's all about the combats. It's all about the
Yes.
combats. It's all about inflicting violence on other people. And part talaga siya ng DNA ng D&D. What do you think about that?
I think definitely, because if we look at it, D&D has its origins in wargaming. So historically, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, and I would say the main line of role playing games has always been combat heavy because of the wargaming roots. Because combat played a significant part, and remember that a lot of the early players of role playing games were men and little boys and teenage boys who wanted to exercise their I would say testosterone, the dreams of violence, right? Of course, there were women, but the ones who actually, how to say, right? The ones who actually like produced stuff are the guys from Wargaming who wanted to be more specific with the war part.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know, I would also put in an addendum there na of course women are also capable of violence.
Yes.
Para some of the most violent players I've had were women, man. And of course, not without mentioning without mentioning pa our friends from the LGBTQ community that they've also are masters of inflicting different kinds of violence as well, diba? Pero yun talaga eh, it's what D&D is, and we can steer it all away from that. But
Yes.
just look at the rules. Everything is a skill check. Everything is an ability check except attack rolls, even if the mechanics are the same. Attack rolls,
Yes.
like seriously, yun talaga yung rule niya. Attack rolls are not ability checks. They're a different beast. Dun pa lang, makikita mo na may focus sa attacks.
There's a certain sense of these are the rules, but when you're fighting, the rules are different.
Yeah,
Like,
right?
oh, okay, so you mean fighting is special, right? So that's what it's trying to say. But right now, what I really like. What I really like is that I have younger friends. Before, when I was hanging out with you guys, I was the young friend. Now I have younger friends, right? When I would talk to them and be like, oh, Kuya Fabs, how you play RPGs and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's this and that, and interestingly, they're not particularly interested in the violence, largely because my team, that's my team, we were violent every weekend. But when I posit the idea na I know you can meet these types of interesting creatures, mythological creatures. You can go to these places. Now it's great because I don't have to say that RPGs are about fighting. I can just point them to a direction like Ryutama, for example,
Ooh,
which is now
Ryutama.
old if I think about it.
Oh,
It's because when I was really young, that was the new toy, new thing. Now it's how many years old,
oh,
right?
I haven't actually played Ryutama ever, even though I have Ryutama right here. So, shout out sa Ryutama, no? Because, interesting nga siya eh. Kasi, Japanese RPGs, occupy their own little world. In the sense na, of course, even Japanese RPGs evolved from Dungeons and Dragons, diba?
Yes.
Pero, like, for example, I hear Fate is still pretty big there. Although, I don't know now, pero last time I checked, Fate was was a big deal. Tapos, if you look at Tenra Bansho Zero, a lot of their RPGs in Japan, parang nag-diverge yung mga gaming philosophies nila. So, ang sarap basahin minsan just so you can see how a culture and acts change on basically an import product, diba?
Yeah.
So, this is Ryutama right here. Oops, masyadong maano. Yan.
Like
I
part
like
of
it.
Ryutama
Uh,
eh.
I like the idea of having the GMs having their own GMPCs that are dragons that affect the story. So, medyo cool siya.
Yun nga, I think it's nice that it's, fantasy fighting is the only thing going with RPGs now. You can do a lot with it. You can explore topics, concepts, and ideas. And I think generally the people interested in it, of course, there's like the D&D types. Once you open up the idea now, you can actually do more. They're drawn to it more. You know, the more artsy type of people and the artsy type of RPG. Before, it would be hard to convince people to play this weird experimental $5 RPG you find in drive-through RPG. Now it's relatively easy,
Oh,
especially with
and
how
ano
popular.
mas uso na itch ngayon kaysa sa
Kaya
drive-thru.
nga eh, kaya nga eh. Like I'm on itch. I would just look at it. I don't have time to play. I would go look at RPGs and video games to itch. So, oh, this is interesting. Download it, play it for like 3 minutes and forget about it.
Tapos mag-chip plug lang tayo. Total, nandito tayo pareho. Speaking of itch, mahanap nyo pala yung alamat ng astig sa itch. So, this was written by
Yes.
Fabs. And
Yes.
it's several years old now, so medyo makikita mo na rin yung age ng PBTA ideas.
Yeah.
Pero, ang gusto ko sa kanya is it's one of the first RPGs or the first RPG written entirely in Tagalog. So,
Yes.
I edited and produced it. And the art is... Who did the art? Si
Si
Carlos. Carlos Manalo. Oo.
Carlos. Yes.
Yeah, Carlos. I think tinatanggap niya lahat ng pangalan na yun eh. So yeah, check it out if you guys are so inclined. And then let's get back to our usual screen. Oh,
Actually played Alamat ng Astig with my team a couple of times early this year. Early this year and late last year. So we played it a couple of times.
kamusta naman? Kamusta ang aging ng alamat ng astig?
Well, because it's so light, like you only really roll when it's interesting. It's great because they would forget na we actually have to roll. So we're playing. Of course, I'm the GM, right? Who else? Like, it would be this would have interesting results whether they fail or succeed or partly succeed. And then I'd have them roll. And those are like the only times where rolling really matters. Kasi they know what mangkukulams do. They know what mandirigma do. So alam mo yun, just focus on the game, not look at the character sheet too much, and it's really fun.
Yeah, kaya masaya ang rules light eh. Madali siyang i-adapt to
Yeah.
different things din. PJC says, would be curious to see how similar Japanese TRPG sensibilities overlap with the booking philosophies of... Oh, interesting.
I
Kasi-
think yeah.
Sige. I'll let you take the floor muna.
Sige. For this one, I would say na there's an interesting, not clash, but contrast. Because with what I know of Japanese RPGs, oh wait, okay. What I know of Japanese RPGs would be present in AJPW and Zen Nihon and Pro Noah, which they like telling epic long story arcs, which is what most Japanese tabletop games do. Tell epic stories, even if in micro scale. How to describe epic story? Kasi epic is just an adjective now eh.
I guess I guess I see what you're saying. Kasi if I remember correctly, like even Tenra Bancho Zero, I think medyo one-shot oriented siya. So,
Yeah.
it's not the length. It's the
The
it's the
feel eh.
the feeling of
Oo.
watching a Marvel movie and how everything
Yes.
is like moon crashing onto you or
Yes.
or
Yes.
stuff like that.
So yeah. So all Japan and Pro Noah do that. They do that. I would say I would say New Japan is what's that what's that especially modern New Japan ha. What's that TRPG where Exalted.
Oh my gosh. Exalted.
New
One
Japan
of
is Exalted.
one of the games that I've always wanted to run kasi parang I have story ideas in my head pero I can't quite find a enough players. You'll find one or two, but I can't find enough players who are willing to sit down on Exalted.
I'm
Actually,
not.
I'm kita mo na. So, I guess quick preview lang no para dun sa mga viewers natin if you're not familiar with Exalted. It's basically you are the children of the sun. So
Yes.
you are demigods. Not quite gods, pero you're at that level. Tapos yung ano pa kayo among the exalted kasi may mga children of the moon, may mga other types of exalted. You're the solars. You're the children of the sun. You're like the highest of the high among the demigods. Tapos what I like about it is that you start out human. I really like I really like playing Exalted na on the first episode you're human and then suddenly you're God. So para magsa-start ka dun sa level na parang yung problema mo mahirap ka, paano mo papakainin yung mga anak mo, ganyan. And then suddenly magiging God ka. And then suddenly decades pass and then matanda na yung mga anak mo tapos dahil pinotektahan mo sila nung bata sila, they became these corrupt landlords who control the farmers ganyan and then now you're concerned about kam- kasalanan ko ba na yung apo ko ay isang elite landlord na na nag-aabuso ng power niya. It's so cool. I wanted to do it but I can't find the player base.
Yeah. Tsaka the thing with Exalted din is you can explore it that way, like the moral implications of it. Like lalo pag when you factor in yung mga Panginoong may lupa and the fact that it's like a that's like a god bloodline. Though there are also some players ng Exalted who treat it like Dragon Ball, which is fine,
Oo.
right? But that's the thing with Exalted. Eh. You get the table of people willing to play Exalted. Are there like views aligned on how to play?
Pwede rin eh, kasi you can let them have their power trips, pero
Mm.
there's, as a GM, you balance that with, oh no, you're slowly destroying the world because you're too powerful. Para if Goku existed in the real world, I feel like the Earth will be destroyed just by the sheer impossibleness of the physics of his power.
Yeah.
Yung charge up pa lang niya destroying mountains. Imagine mo, mag-super saiyan siya tapos nasira yung bundok makiling. Ano gagawin mo?
Yung ecosystem, yung maapektuhan na ecosystem, no?
Oh.
Grabe yun. Tapos not to mention yung radiation ng powers nila. Like the heat, I would assume the heat that their powers emanate, wouldn't that be like dangerous? Wouldn't that affect the climate?
And it
Uy, that's an
does when they
RPG.
charge the clouds part.
Oo. Uy, that's an RPG on its own, ha?
Oh.
You are, true gods, true powerful beings in a realistic world. Then the GM would have to factor, kasi nag-super saiyan ka sa Guatemala, lalong uminit.
Climate change up.
Oo. Diba?
So,
Tapos you fought above the Antarctic. So now, umangat yung water level kasi yung melted significant icebergs and glaciers.
OMG.
Diba?
Now I want to write that RPG.
Diba?
I feel like there are things that can be done. So PJC says that a Super Saiyan in the physical world would be akin to a cosmic scale Lovecraftian eldritch abomination.
Yes.
Yes. So, in a world with Super Saiyans, ikaw yung human.
Diba?
Parang interesting siya. PJC has actually mentioned something that I wanted to touch on, no? In the sense that JRPGs evolved. And we're talking tabletop here, guys. Hindi computer RPGs. But we'll call them JRPGs just to say. JRPGs evolved differently from the way Western RPGs evolved. And I guess in the same light with the with the growth of RPG Southeast Asia, we're also starting to see that the Southeast Asian perspective leads to different RPGs. Now, my question for you, as someone who is in Philippine wrestling, do you think there's something that, as like that as well sa Philippine storytelling naman? Or maybe even broader Southeast Asian storytelling? Because I know you sometimes collaborate with other Southeast Asian outfits.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I know straight up, I would have bias with my answer because I'm a pro wrestler. I'm not a booker in MWF. I would I have no intention to touch the books. Veronica can do that for all she cares, or Sunny can do that for all he cares. My main thing really is wrestling and the stories that we tell in the ring, right? But with what you mentioned, like, is there like a trend of how Filipinos, especially Filipino wrestling, how we go about it? I would say in MWF, yes, there is a significant and conscious effort to tell Filipino stories, starting from 2018 when when we were under different administration. Up until now, it's still very much there. We just had our press con early this afternoon. Tapos tinanong kami like, "Oh, what makes MWF different from other local promotions and overseas promotions?" And our general answer was, is we because we're unabashedly Filipino and we're not trying to hide it, you know. So I think with the storytelling, especially in 2018, where they ran the Fabio Makisig versus Robinson storyline, you have this poor boy who is sacrificing his body for family, and then you have this other boy who is sacrificing his family for his dreams and passion. That's a very Filipino story. Sacrificing yourself for your family, or sacrificing your
Ay,
family
pucha,
for your
timely yan ngayon kasi
dreams.
may honor thy father and mother ngayon na
Oh,
discussion sa
diba?
political sphere.
Yeah. So something like that. And speaking of political sphere, one of our great stories was in 2019, where we literally mirrored everything the government did.
OMG. At some level, no, natuwa ako na niche tayo enough. And by tayo, I mean kasi I also, like, I consider myself part of the Filipino wrestling verse as an
Yeah.
audience member. Parang as a universe member in a sense. Or Galaxy if you're in AEW, I guess. Sorry, na-dis na ako. But what I wanted to say is that I'm glad that we were niche enough na you were able to tell these stories and it reached a significant amount of people. But at the same time, hindi kayo na red tag.
Yes.
Because that was a risk, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Ano nga eh? Sorry, my computer went to sleep, now it's back.
Okay lang.
Anyway, ano nga eh? We were talking like a few days ago, and we said, like, if the wrong person gets elected, we might have to stop operations again. We have that fear. We have that fear with us, because we're very politically edgy, and that's the thing with, especially with Philippine wrestling. The stories we tell are unabashedly Filipino. Overseas, however, I can't say the same for everyone, because remember that Southeast Asian scene is largely inspired by WWE. So they tend to mimic Americanisms. I like to call it Americanisms when it comes to their pro wrestling. So of course, there's uniquely features and qualities and flavors that is unique to each country, unique to each culture. But a lot of them, they are not at the level and at the power to do what MWF did in 18 and 19, which was to tell a long form, cohesive story that reflects the culture. Problema kasi with the entire Southeast Asian scene is we still move show to show, you know. Which is why we're trying things a bit differently by having tapings to fill in the gaps in between shows.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yun, actually, no? I've been... I wanted to go to the May 1 taping but I had something to do for May 1. So, abangan na lang natin
Yes.
we'll talk about where to find these things later. Yung mga shows and yung mga recordings natin. But before we get there, I also want to touch upon someone who is both from the RPG world, because this is an RPG channel, and someone who is also from the wrestling world. Like, we know, I guess we haven't really touched upon it, pero I think it's easy to say na yung role playing from RPG to wrestling, may connect ba sila?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You know, one thing I learned from you guys, you know, I have to credit our friend circle for helping me become who I am today. Because let's face it, I was fucking young when I was hanging out with you guys. I was like late teens, early 20s. I was like really young. And then if the thing is, you know, had I not met you guys, a lot of my strong opinions of being an accepting person, I probably would be like that. And you know, being efficient and logistics oriented. Had I not met Rachel and you guys, probably wouldn't be like that. But another thing that I learned from you is when you play RPGs, you have fun. But if your fun means less fun for the others, then that's probably not a good thing, you know.
Oo.
And that's a thing that a lot of wrestlers need to understand. You know, what might be fun in your idea to do in wrestling might not be particularly great for your partner, might not be particularly great for the company or even the audience. You know, what is fun for you might not be fun for them. You have to understand that. So a lot of the philosophies that I learned when I was addicted in playing RPGs almost like nonstop, I carry to wrestling. And it's been, honestly, if I did not play RPGs, I would not be where I am today. And people think that, oh, that's an overstatement. But now for real, because a lot of the things that I use are just because I learned and generated in RPGs. Eh.
Oh, well, for some idea, no, medyo totoy nga si Fabs when he first showed up. Parang, back in 2015 when GNG started. Parang he was our proto-Rachel in a sense. Bago pa pumasok si Rachel, si Fabs yung the one who's running around with a clipboard, taking attendance. And taking the entrance fees. Tapos di wala tayong entrance area where people
Oo,
will have to physically
hahabulin
fall
mo.
in line and pay up for the event. Hindi. Andun na sila sa event, dun pa lang tayo kukuha ng bayad.
Hahabulin, my God. You know?
So, it was very inefficient, pero Fabs made up for it with sheer enthusiasm, which I couldn't
And
do at the time kasi at the time I was already in my late 20s. So,
and youth, my God.
uh,
You know, walking around and all of those. My knees were not significantly damaged nun eh. In the process of being damaged because I trained hardcore during that time. So, I would
so yeah.
say, yeah, definitely RPGs, like the overlap is significant from an from how to say, like an employee perspective. If I were like being part of something bigger, you know, it's if you because RPGs is a team, you know, is a team game. The same with wrestling. You're not alone. So you have to think of other people as well. So yes, definitely very something fell outside, but that's fine. I live in a gated
Probably.
community na safe na.
Wow. Hindi na, oy, baka ano yan.
Oo.
Baka kumukota. That was actually one of part of a discussion that I had with a different stream about playing RPGs under this administration. And side note lang to, and one of the things that was talked about kasi was that there was a time wherein people couldn't really play RPGs. This was pre-pandemic. They couldn't really play RPGs because hindi sila pwedeng gabihin. Kasi yung itsura nila, karentag-rentag. So, uuwi ka pa lang, baka mapagkamalang ka, kasi kailangan nilang umabot sa quota.
Hard.
It was hard times, man.
Yeah.
But, on a lighter note, yes, I think, lighter, no? I think it's good kasi ako as a GM, I really try to instill that also in my groups na it's okay to have fun, but not at the expense of someone else's fun.
Mm-hmm.
If yung fun mo, parang you're already putting down others. And sometimes you're doing it unconsciously.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to know na kapag nasabihan ka, even as the GM, if as the GM nasabihan ako na, dude, hindi maganda yung ginagawa nating scene. Dapat you have the presence of mind to like, okay, I made a mistake. Apologize,
Yeah.
script change, and then move on. So that everyone can still have fun.
Yes.
That's very
Yes.
important for me. It's a very important aspect of my own brand of GMing and RPGs.
Yeah.
So, ayun. Pero ano, was there any very interesting or no, what not interesting, unexpected aspect of RPGs? Because yung the whole role playing, okay, I role play a character sa wrestling, I also role play a character. That's kind of a given. Pero something unexpected na nakuha mo from RPGs na na-transfer mo.
Okay. Well, this is still probably obvious, but well, I don't think people really understand how deep and useful it is. In RPGs, we have character sheets, right?
Yes.
Now you would say, oh, when I have to think of a character, I have to make a character sheet for that, wrestling gimmick or wrestling character. Not necessarily, but don't think of it like a character sheet. Instead, think of it as a pegboard. Like when you create a character, especially like the more modern ones, the more story game ones, where they require you to put a weakness. Having that, knowing how to create a character sheet will help you create a good and relatable wrestling character. And
Huh.
not just the stat block, not just the stat block, but all of the other things in between, like
Saan mo
in
lalagay yung
anything,
skills mo, ganyan ba?
you not just the skills, but the relationships with, because in RPGs, everybody hates the lonesome rogue, right?
Yes.
In
Umagri agad,
wrestling,
ano? But, I will also explain, ano? Kasi, if you're the lonesome rogue, in a team game, in a group game, medyo KJ ka. So, there's a way to make it work. Pero, if you're gonna be a lone rogue, you still have to figure out how your being a loner interacts with the group. It can work, pero
yes,
mahirap.
it can work, but the thing is, you can't create a character in a vacuum,
Mm-mm.
you
Yeah,
know, which
exactly.
is the which is the same in RP in wrestling, right? Like if you make a lone character, a lone wolf character, why are you in wrestling? This is a social activity. We're fighting. If you're really a lone wolf, then don't go to the wrestling shows. Stay at home. Do promos at home, right? So
Actually, I've heard of that criticism, no, na parang if you really want to roleplay by yourself, write a fucking book.
yes,
Diba?
yes, yes, and at the same time, if you really want to do this wrestling gimmick that you so like, make a movie, make a horror movie, because it's always the Undertaker, Bray Wyatt, and types that always I am who have this really weird gimmick idea that only works in their context. So when they come in like, I am this dark creature filled with raging demons that is undefeated. Like, mm, really now? So okay, I put you're put beside Kyle Season. How do you react? I am dark
Rage.
and
Dark.
moody. Oh yeah, but Kyle Season is shit. Is shit talking. What do you do? You're gonna brood. It's those things. Like when you make a character, when you make an RPG character, it's always in the context of the world that you're playing in, of your party members. When you make a wrestling character, it's always in context of the wrestling landscape that you're in, not a fantasy that's in your head. If the fantasy that's in your head fits the wrestling landscape, perfect. More often than not, it's not. So, creating a character sheet, following a good character sheet, and then forming a good wrestling gimmick, that kind of goes hand in hand. They're very much connected.
I think yung term na hinahanap din natin is collaborative storytelling. Diba?
Young, it's
Parang,
always a collaborative storytelling. Right?
You
Nothing
don't
exists in a
make
vacuum.
something para it also happens with GMs yung
Uh,
the idea of the GM na okay, I have this wonderful world, ginawa ko siya, I it took me 3 months to make this world from the ground up, languages, etc., etc. Tapos apparently ang gusto lang gawin ng party mo is ligawan yung ogre mage na nasa first town to the left. You have
yeah.
tapos if you insist on your epic path, none of you will enjoy.
Yes, and then it's the same thing with bookers and a lot of a lot of RPG geeks or tangential wrestling fans who probably think, oh, I can book a story. No, you cannot, because like GMing is knowing your player expectations and then managing that with the story that you write. Booking a wrestling show is understanding what your roster can and cannot do and writing a story out of their abilities and their personalities. You can't book a show with this predetermined story, or or this big finale, and nobody can do it because you're gonna hurt your wrestlers if you force them to do that. So yeah, that's another similarity. Always think of the group, ganon.
Yeah. And I think ano rin parang I've never booked a wrestling show, of course. But I just thinking about it, I'm like, how, how do you even account for like unexpected things? Like, of course, it's wrestling. It's a physical activity. People get injured. So what if your top story gets injured? So yung mga ganong bagay, ang gagawin mo?
Diba? So those are the things that people always have to understand. Na this is fun, but at the same time, you can't just let your heart have its fun if that means that's at the expense of someone else. You know. But that's also really why I'm so thankful that I did RPGs before wrestling, because I saw the similarities from afar, and by the lessons I learned from you guys, I know how to say, like, that's a stupid idea, let's not do that. I had the gift of foresight, essentially, thanks to RPGs.
Or yung ako, something that I have also learned as a GM is that something in your story that can work for a home group might not work for a streaming group. Kasi pagdating sa streaming, suddenly, you have to also consider the sensibilities of your viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Like,
think may
yeah.
transference din yan sa... Transference, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use. Pero meron din siyang connect sa Philippine wrestling scene, na I remember there was a little bit of backlash when you had Maria Ozawa as a guest, for
Yeah.
example. Pero sakto lang. It was okay. I think a stronger pushback that I've seen was when you were making it political. There were a lot of people who were like, I don't want things to be political. I just want to have fun. And I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
People will. It's very interesting as PJC just mentioned. It's great we're touching upon that. Right? You know, here's an interesting thing, and people will probably hate me for
Oo,
this.
nakuha ko siya kay PJC.
People will probably say like, "Oh, Fabs, you're boxing what you can do." But here's my belief, right? If our values do not align, but our values, or not values in that case, our preferences do not align, and then we're not essentially hurting or endangering anyone, then we can walk together, we can shake hands and walk away, or even walk together. But when our values are directly related to morals and people's lives are endangered, then that's when I will be a bit more, I've put my foot down, kumbaga. So my thing there is, we're doing a political story, which I think we should, because wrestling has always been something political. Go look at history of wrestling; it has always been political. Is it to the benefit of the bigger picture? Maybe not, especially in the redneck states,
Actually,
But
what...
yeah,
Sorry, pala ko konti na. Para sa akin, yung... 'Di ba, 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 ' it has always been political. Hindi mo lang napapansin kasi yung politics niya, it's the usual right-wing politics that may naturally align with your conservative views. So, yun. There's a lot of rednecking. Ayokong gamitin yung redneck na term kasi baka may mainsulto. Pero yung basically yung conservative states ng US, a lot of the
Yes.
morals get transferred. Um, and I think the same goes for RPGs. I've mentioned also in a earlier interview with art for RPGs na RPGs have always been political. D&D started out by gaining XP from killing monsters that are not like you, goblins and orcs and
Yes.
etc. or stealing their stuff. That used to be XP. So, dun pa lang, meron ka ng politics dun. Because it just so happens to be a very conservative point of view.
Mm.
Sorry
So
for
so
cutting you off.
no, it's fine. Which leads to this guy, which also leads to my point. Which people say like we get that a lot, especially when we make strong stances on major, on major political issues. Like, oh, you should make wrestling political. First of all, it already is. Second of all, if that's your opinion, then maybe we're not the show for you. Which is, something like, I understand. I am an entertainer, should welcome all the audience. But here's my thing, here's my thing. I start welcoming them. Who else am I have to welcome? Right? We've also had misogynists in our show, people who are against LGBT. And what? Do we keep tolerating them because all opinions matter? No, their opinions don't matter in my case. First of all, it's a business move. If I accept them and then it shuns out this entire market, then I will take a loss business wise. But if I shun the people who shun a significant portion of my market, then what's that? I eject a small percentage and I welcome a bigger percentage of audience. So that's just business moves for me, which I still hold up to this day. Sometimes not all fans are welcome because if they push out the other fans, then they're not the fans that I'd like. But that's it. If they, as long as they don't hurt the other fans, should be good.
That reminds me of something that happened in Philippine tabletop RPGs also recently. That there was a movement that was basically gamers for Lenny. So when that happened, there was a lot of pushback. Now either they be political, the group is becoming political. Then number one, it's called Philippine tabletop RPGs. My word Philippine don, and as far as
Yes.
I understand, Philippine politics fall under that purview. And then
Yes.
it's not like they were just campaigning. They were running games for the benefit of promoting Lenny. It works. Now you may disagree, in which case
Mm-hmm.
you are free to step away from the group. And then the other thing that cracks me up is that there was a group na said, pagka nagkaroon ng bongbong gamers for lane, bongbong gamers, malamang yan, hindi nyo i-accept. Ganyan. Well, thing is, ako, as a moderator of a group, I do not deal in hypotheticals. I will deal with a bongbong group for Lenny, for gamers rather. A gamers for bongbong. If and when it happens. But also ask, why doesn't it happen?
Yun nga eh. Yun nga eh. Parang the best answer is there. Okay, go ahead and try.
Oh.
For me,
Oo.
okay, go do it.
Kasi I can't make a blanket statement na they will not be banned. Paano kung siya, bongbong group siya, tapos puro tungkol sa pro-martial law na
Puro troll.
pumapatay ng tao, ganyan.
Diba?
Edi, medyo issue siya sa other rules ng group.
Yeah.
So,
Then it becomes a morality issue,
oo.
right?
But at the same time, it's perfectly possible that they just create a bongbong RPG gamers. Edi, go. More power to you. It's not my thing, but if that makes you happy, sige.
Isipin, isipin mo their campaign is about pushing out the Beatles.
Pero it's interesting when the campaign is less about um, when the campaign becomes, the gamers for Lenny should not exist,
Oh.
as opposed to and ang reasoning nila is kasi walang bongbong gamers. Edi gumawa kayo. But we're
Yeah.
not because we're centrist. Eh di sige. It's not your issue. Centrist pala kayo eh. Bakit kayo
Yeah.
nagkaka-issue?
If you centrist, then why does it matter? You
Oo.
know. Yun, pero yeah, those matters like right now, MWF, is respecting the elections. We're not treading that political line. However, we will once we get back on groove again. We will most likely be political again. But right now, we're just really holding our pieces together. And what's interesting there is straight up, a lot of the local wrestling people are pro Lenny. And a friend approached me. She is, an avid Lenny supporter, and she does a lot. I think she's part of her smaller campaign team kasi ang daming mga offshoot campaign groups ni Lenny,
Oo.
right? Told me like, hey, you wanna start pro wrestlers for Lenny? Like, I said, I would do that if we had the logistical ability to do something like that, and I can be sure that my wrestlers would get covered with insurance. Because, if we tour and somebody gets hurt on the tour, that's hard on us. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, as much as we'd like to be very political, right now we just simply can't afford it. So
That should be a
we're
decision
not.
that should be respected din eh.
Yeah.
I will say na I think especially with um what do you call this? With different groups like with RPG groups and ganyan. It is a choice to be non-partisan. I think it's a choice that people can make. Okay lang yan.
Hmm.
But like my own university, FEU, came out with a stance because there are significant Marcos people in the FEU verse. Maraming students and alumni na pro Marcos. So I understand why they would choose to not take a side, right? Although ang mali nila is that they say that FEU has always been apolitical, which is different.
Yeah.
Apolitical means you are not affected by politics. And as history
Yeah.
has shown, FEU has been very affected by politics. Nick Joaquin was a history professor in FEU. And then World War II, a lot of the founders of FEU were killed during that war. So, clearly, politics affects FEU. So, hindi ka pa rin maging apolitical. If they have said something like FEU is non-partisan, not everyone would have liked it, especially people who would have liked to take us would have liked their university to choose one or the other. Pero that is an understandable business move.
Yeah.
Wala lang.
Which is a funny thing because right now we tapped into one of a really expert and veteran PR consultant, and we're not paying them, we're not paying him big bucks, wala namang pera ang MWF pa. But we worked with him before in 2018, and he fell in love with the product. And when he heard now we're trying to get back on our feet, he said he's gonna help. I'm sort of taking on a mentor. He's my mentor right now. I'm learning a lot from him. He told me, "Oh, you have to be careful with your words. I remember your Fabio Makisig told me that." I'm like, I think because I'm Fabio Makisig, and I can afford to say a lot of controversial things. But he said that in reference to he doesn't like how FAU worded their statement, because that's the thing. If they could have worded it differently, it would have been fine.
It's interesting kasi it's not like they don't have PR people, right?
Yes.
Parang
Is
feeling
that
ko,
intentional?
medyo misstep siya eh.
Mm-mm.
Pero okay lang. I think medyo misstep din yung statement ng UP naman, like another university I'm attached to. They also reissued a statement today and medyo misstep din siya. Yun naman masyado mahaba. Masyado mahaba without saying anything, which is a
Such a
lot of UP.
political, such a political move. Say a lot without saying anything.
So ayun. Yeah, but yes, I am of the opinion na politics will affect every hobby that we have,
Yeah.
every venture that we have. And apolitical is a lie. Unless you are rich enough to throw money at politics so that it doesn't affect you.
Which in that case now you have a moral obligation to do something with that money. I was,
True,
so
true.
it's like no escaping.
So, ayun. In which case, yeah, you being apolitical has become your choice that I do not agree with. Pero,
Yeah, yeah.
ayun.
Pero
So, I
yun nga.
guess, sige, what were you saying?
Ano I was saying na one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is that once wrestling gets back on track, not only will my schedule be better, but we can start doing really fun stories and start pushing the envelope, ika nga. Ayun.
Lapit na. I know that suddenly talking about politics is a bit weird, especially for people who are outside the country. But
Yeah.
I want to beg your pardon to the viewers who are from different countries because our elections are this Monday. So
Yes.
it's almost impossible not to. Every one of us is anxious because a government change is always
Uh,
uh, it can turn out badly or it
yeah.
can turn out well. Or it can turn out neutral. Pag nanalo si Pacquiao for some reason, parang medyo neutral ako eh. Parang, okay.
Oh,
Same old, same
I'm
old.
I'm a, I'm gonna tell you the story, pops. I'm gonna tell you the story, and for all our viewers, this is a funny story. A few weeks back, some random fan messaged me and asked me, Sir Fabio, who are you gonna vote? And I don't really reply to fan messages. But so I didn't even leave it on scene. I just checked sa inbox. Then, he didn't wait for me. He replied, si Pacquiao iboboto ko kasi mahilig siya sa sports. Pag siya nanalo, sana itulak niya ang pro wrestling sa Pilipinas. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't even know what you're telling me. I don't know.
I guess it's okay for me to randomly speculate kasi just based on statistical figures, and I do believe in surveys because that's my
Yes.
background, statistics and mathematics.
I also believe in surveys because the last class I took before I left college was statistics and I really, really enjoyed it.
So basically what I wanted to say is malamang sa malamang di siya mananalo, di ba? Unless we live in the same universe na tatamaan tayo ng meteor next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
The most random of universes. Pag nanalo siya, what I would expect is that most of the things will remain the same. Feeling
Yes.
ko status quo.
Mm-mm.
Pacquiao would be a very good figurehead in the sense that a head of state can work, but as an actual person who drafts, who commands, who directs the country, feeling ko ibang
Yeah.
tao. But that's just me.
But that's the most likely scenario. Which is
Shoutout pala
still
kay
weird though.
Shoutout kay Avoider Dragon.
Hey.
Hello, you can only be apolitical in your own head.
Yeah.
And PJC also did the shout out.
Commissioner Sunny. But it's still weird because that fan randomly messaged me. I'm like, I don't know why do I have to. I don't know. I mean, it's just out of the blue. I
Pero
get messages
props
like
to
that
him.
a lot.
Props to him na yun yung naisip niya. Parang, baka makatulong sa
Yeah,
inyo pagka nanalo si Pacquiao.
yeah. We have a lot of loyal fans na
Uh-uh.
nakakataba ng puso. Just sometimes, there, things that I'm not particularly concerned about. Don't bring them to my attention because I don't know what to do with them. Like, that Pacquiao as president opinion.
Steiner math.
Exactly. I don't know. Ayun lang.
So, yun. So, actually, I would like to open the floor then for our viewers because we're wrapping up a little bit. In a
Yeah.
little bit. And if you have any questions for Fabs or me or both of us, now's a really good time to do it. Pero, ano pa ba pwede natin gawin? Dude, kailan ka maglalaro ng RPG ulit?
Yeah. Well, for one, I have good internet and essentially I've saved up. I've saved up naman to have like a decent setup, so I can play RPGs online almost at any time because my schedule is really free, you know. Because so that's a good thing. Although I really do miss playing dice like face to face. That's another thing. So, but what do you call this? If what I want right now, which can be like a project of sorts, is if I can get you in a physical space, with my team, with my wrestling team, you can just run a one shot of D&D for them. That's content. It's gonna be great.
You know
The
what?
logistics lang talaga kalaban.
We can figure that out. I think
Yeah.
that's something that I can do. That's something that I can commit to. And, my job is lenient enough that if I say, guys, mag-leave ako ng 2 araw, di nila ako tatanungin kung bakit. So,
Oh,
basta may tamang pasabi.
yeah.
So, it's fine.
That's great. I'm really one of the things that we wanna do. We wanna do is try to bridge the niche communities together because a lot of the niche communities all have a shared
Overlaps.
appreciation for pro wrestling. So we want to tap on that.
So ito, may question si PJC. Dahil na-mention to, this came about from the pub mats that
Yeah.
we did for this particular episode. Why Fab's disdain for Worldwide Wrestling as a system if he's generally okay with PBTA as a resolution and character building?
Okay, because I don't like the premise of worldwide wrestling itself. I don't. It's PBTA. That's fine. I don't like the premise of worldwide wrestling because it is a very assumptive game.
You know what?
Because
Walk me through this kasi actually hindi ko pa binabasa yung Worldwide Wrestling eh.
okay. Simplest way, it's a wrestling RPG for smarks.
Okay.
Yun. So a lot of the backstage going ons that you would have read in their cheats, they try to incorporate that. A lot of the
Oh, a lot
people's
of the dirt sheet takes yung there's backstage heat on XYZ
yes,
because
yes. So
oo nga,
I
parang
don't
di
like the
masaya yun.
concept of worldwide wrestling because the idea of the game is that these are I don't know who wrote the game, but whoever wrote the game probably assumed, this is what probably happens backstage. This is probably how they put a match. This is probably how matches are booked. And I don't like that because it hammers a lot of the misconceptions that a lot of hardcore wrestling fans tend to believe. So essentially they make our job harder. So I don't like worldwide wrestling. I think like I'm not saying I can write a better wrestling RPG, right? But I think Exalted is a better wrestling RPG. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to jump off that no kasi how I would answer this is that I feel like a universe of wrestling whether it's WWE Universe or if you want to call it AEW Galaxy or MWF Kalawakan, thanks pala PJC for that, or whatever, they are all RPG worlds. Like, if you look at WWE, there's an undead wizard running around shooting lightning bolts, and then you have a rich guy who turned into the COO of the company, and then you have a bunch of masked men flying around defying gravity. Tapos meron kang factions. It's an RPG, right?
Yeah.
And even AEW, those are the two ones I'm most familiar with. So yun yung pinaka samples ko. So it's not a preference. So even AEW, like you have like the Blackpool Combat Club in one corner, feeling like it will fight with the House of Black in another corner, which is basically a bunch of goth people with darkness magic who spit black ink at
Yeah.
women and turn them into evil cheerleaders. That's an RPG, man.
Yeah. So see. So why you gotta have like a different set of rules for WW, worldwide wrestling? See, uses heat in place of PBTA's bond system, which doesn't make a distinction between in-character kayfabe heat and backstage. And that's my problem, because define heat. Because heat, how smarks know it, is different from heat, how us wrestlers know it.
Mm.
That's why I don't like it. Like, oh, he has heat. Okay, define heat. These are the things like smarks don't really understand.
Kakanin
Because
Sinta is saying that it would be interesting to see kung ano yung mga classes in a wrestling-themed RPG. You know what?
oh,
That'll be fun to speculate, ano? Tingin mo. Kasi there's always a supernatural character. There's always a... There's always the baby face who just wants to wrestle and be the best.
the fighter,
The fighter, right?
the
Tapos,
fighter,
tapos meron yung he's like the bad guy but he's the good guy in his head. There's that
the
guy.
rogue. The rogue types.
Mm.
And then we have the hosts, which would be the barbarians, the managers, who would be the bards, Undertaker, the necromancer, or warlock.
Like the random 7 foot tall guy that's not very skilled but somehow will take it down with one punch. It's an
Yeah,
interesting
but
thing to think about. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it would be really fun, wrestling themed RPG. But like in the context of classes, it's gonna be fun. Uh,
Oh, this is something that we might be able to answer together. What RPG system, Avoider Dragon asks, what RPG system can best simulate the political brouhaha we experience in the real world? Is that even possible in RPGs?
I have a funny answer. I have a funny answer, but only if you're a real RPG geek will you find it funny. GURPS.
Okay, a quick side note. GURPS is a very, very, very detail-oriented RPG. So, it's actually impressive how detail-oriented GURPS
Yes.
is. So,
Even the wind, what do you call that? The wind drag when something is moving really fast.
people say that they love simulationist RPGs. I will not believe them until they say they love GURPS.
And we know someone who actually plays GURPS
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and enjoys GURPS.
Are we thinking of the same person? Because I'm thinking of Justin.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a thing at him, it's the thing that he would
Yeah.
like. He really likes talking about
Very detailed notes. My God. Amazing nga eh. I follow him because we have very similar interests in detail. It's just that I don't have the time to actually pursue those interests. So I'm living vicariously through his Facebook posts.
Ako, I'll try to answer that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that question. What RPG system can best simulate political brouhaha? You know, ang answer ko dyan is any system that doesn't talk about it. Because that will be the system where people will put political stuff in. Something that I actually, this is just my preference. It's not something that I consider to be bad per se, but it's something that does not appeal to me. Is when the writer of the RPG talks about the politics that he or she or they are trying to emulate in the front page. This game is about how all cops are bastards. That's cool for you, but for me, I feel like if you wanted to say that, it would be evident in your text. You don't have to spell it out. Where parang ganon. Am I making sense na
Yeah, yeah.
if you are a game wherein your politics are embedded into your writing, which is probably what is happening anyway, even if you do not intend it, then that will be the best political system.
There's probably some game in itch.io that does this.
Probably. Regarding GURPS, that's just not just a system, that's bulletproof armor.
Yeah nga eh. Pero isipin mo, with GURPS, you make stats like political will, diba? Nepotism
You can, yeah, yeah. And I think, medyo open-ended ang GURPS to begin with, eh.
Yeah. It would be just funny, like you're really gonna sit down to do that.
Pwede naman. I mean, I see how people can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Pero probably not for me.
I think I'm just talking about, like the mental energy. Maybe at the start you can get it, but once you get, like really deep into it, it's gonna be tiring. Not to mention the research involved. You will probably, your mental health will be in danger if you actually go deep into that politics and you really explore. Even when you start factoring the heinous things that happens in politics.
That happens um I think the most recent time that happened for me is Vampire. Because I'm currently
Ah,
running a Vampire game, and one of the players characters was
sometimes
turned
I
into a
listen.
vampire.
Yeah, sometimes I listen to that when working at night.
Medyo intense minsan, di ba?
Kaya nga eh.
Pero
Grabe.
I'm a bit sad about this actually, so I will make kwento. Lumabas yung pagkakonyo ko, sorry. There was one of the characters was turned into a vampire during martial law, and she was turned in response to almost disappearing from this basically a desperacida. You know the people who just go missing
Yeah.
because you run afoul of the cops, and or what were they called, the constabulary at the time. And
Yeah,
that was that.
constabulary.
It just so happened that there was also a vampire there who turned her, and it was a very heavy. It's a very interesting kasi Vampire is a game that openly says that we are political. But at the same time, I don't think they openly say what their politics are. So
Yeah.
I have seen Vampire interpreted both ways. I've seen them interpreted in a very liberal way, and in a very conservative way. And this is also not an endorsement for Vampire, because I've seen Vampire used to abuse people, because there are rules in Vampire about if you drink each other's blood and how that controls your mind. That plus LARPing has led to really bad things in the US. So, and I leave it at that.
That's why I have like I have a hard stop for games that I'm not really interested in playing. Vampire, werewolf, and what company
World
is
of
that again? Like
Darkness.
yon World of Darkness, and all of the games that fall under it, I'm not interested because I want to have fun. I can talk about morality and politics in my game, but takes different kind of heaviness to play those games, which I appreciate. I will listen to it, but I don't want to be in that position.
To be honest, I understand. Pero, yun nga, I mean, I'm a hypocrite if I say that I don't enjoy it, kasi clearly I run the game.
Yeah.
So, I do enjoy it. Pero, I also know that that's not everyone's cup of tea, and if someone says
Yeah.
that, actually, I don't want to play in that game. Sure. Automatic yun. You don't have to explain. Ray, being upfront and explicit about the creator's politics, I think that's why I've been the most hesitant about playing or running Dog Eat Dog. Oh, I've heard about Dog Eat Dog, yeah. Even if the premise interests me. Dog Eat Dog, I think, was created by a diaspora Filipino, if I'm not mistaken. And it is about colonial colonial violence. The violence that I could be wrong, but it's about the violence that are inflicted to people as a result of colonialism, which is a very Phil-am thing,
Yeah.
a very Phil-am thing to think about. But yun nga, I agree. That's the same for me, because um, they talk about what their game is about upfront, which is good for them. It's something that I understand is appealing to a specific group of people. It's just not the type of thing I will be into.
Mhm.
So same. So there, if there's no other questions, I guess magra-wrap up na tayo. Thank you sa mga viewers natin so far. Um, I'll go through Avoider Dragon. World of Darkness is a different level of role playing. I'll stick to the video games. That's true. I think they have a new video game that's apparently very interesting. It's a PvP type of game, I think. I haven't really looked into it much, but it's a vampire game. Then again, the troubled development of Bloodlines 2, that might be it. Bloodlines 2 is likely a reflection of that ickiness in itself. So, I'll give you the floor, Fabs. Meron ka ba mga i-promote?
Yun, no, we trying to push wrestling back again. Slowly, pro wrestling is returning. So if you can Manila Wrestling Federation on Facebook, YouTube, and even Twitter and even Instagram, that would be great. But to truly help us, we would really appreciate a subscription or a membership on Gank. Subscribe to us on Gank, which is this one, Manila Wrestling Fed. For around 520 pesos, you get monthly free wrestling content, and because it's early in the morning and a lot of people watch us. The first episode for AKTV 2022 is gonna drop May 11, right? So if you buy or if you subscribe to our gank, you buy the membership, you get to watch the May 11 episode and all of the other episodes for this month. But also, you get to watch Medianoche, essentially the show that proved MWF and Philippine wrestling is not dead. So you can watch the December 2021 uh wrestling show Medianoche on Gank. You can watch that now. But for the next few episodes of the AKTV 2022, it's gonna roll out during this May. So really exciting and a lot of discounts and fun stuff to be had. So subscribe to us, Nergank, please.
Cool, cool. Tapos parang may sinay ka sa akin poster. Tuloy ba to? Tuloy ba to?
Yes, yes.
Pakita ko.
So, sige.
Here we go.
Ayun. If you
What's
still
this about?
hesitant, yeah, if you still hesitant, maybe you just wanna get the feel for it. Episode 1 will be available for free on Wednesday, but we have like a procedure for that. So abang lang bukas sa Facebook page na MWF. So if you like what you see sa episode 1, then that's a reason for you to subscribe on Gang.
Yon, check out Gank, guys. Gank is also very interesting kasi I'm also thinking about getting a Gank account dahil it's really been helpful at helping Southeast Asian creators monetize. And syempre, maraming mga may trepidation about, ay, monetize, preparahan nyo kami. Hindi, well, we need money, guys.
Yeah, to do this.
We need to earn. So,
the best thing about Gang, Pops? You want to know why we closed the deal with Gang? Is because it can handle GCash.
ayan. Ayan yung appeal din sa akin. It can handle GCash. I'm not sure if it can handle Maya.
Not yet.
Not yet. Pero GCash is a big thing.
GCash
Kasi-
yun. Pero they're looking to add more fintech options naman daw. But GCash is like,
Ang lakas ng GCash in the sense na ako as a creator in the internet for RPGs, yung mga PDFs ko, ang bumibili lang international audience. Bakit? Kasi walang GCash. Walang GCash sa itch. Walang GCash sa drive-thru. So, and not everyone has PayPal because to get PayPal, you
Yes.
need to be a certain level of middle class to get PayPal.
tingnan mo, Steam introduced GCash. You know what happened? I bought a lot of games. It took a lot of money from me.
So, yeah, check it out, guys. Check out Gank.
Yes.
Siyempre, binenta ko yung Gank, no?
Yeah.
Ayun. And also,
Most of us is gonna be on Gang.
I think so.
Yeah.
Streamers, RPG folk, wrestling.
Some of my cosplay friends are on Gang now.
Wow! Exciting time. It's an exciting time, especially since we are slowly but surely getting back on our feet, guys. Also, since nandito si Fabs, I will also promote if you could go to bukojuice.itch.io. Andun yung mga gaming products ko, which includes Alamat ng Astig, which is written by Fabs and produced by me. So, check it out. It's a Tagalog RPG. Mabilis lang siyang magets and $8. Pero kung may gang na ako, pwede ko siyang ibenta with Gcash. So,
Oh,
very cool.
Grabe. Everything makes kailangan talaga natin sa convenient platform. Sa platform talaga.
Alright. So, do you have anything else to promote? Because if there's nothing else, matutulog na tayo. Alam niyo naman ang late night BJ masaya siya pero nakakapagod.
I'm good. I miss doing these with you guys.
So, ayun. So, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we were going to be going to our outro, and just remember, uminom parati ng buko juice para mapawi ang uhaw nyo. So,
Yes.
bye. Thank you, Fabs. Although, stay on for a while.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.